Hello, welcome to Random Offense, where we explore the overlap between sports, culture, sometimes politics. I am your host, Ethan Strauss. We will be joined by the preeminent sports media reporter slash critic, that is Ryan Glasspiegel of Front Office Sports. Now, according to my sources, he's cursing somewhere in the background about some technical difficulty. So hopefully we can
It,
bring him on without incident. Is that so? Can we bring him up? Can we beam
it,
him up?
it is a very first world problem.
Yes.
So I had cleaning ladies today. They were supposed to come on Wednesday, but they were late and it was going to push us into the time where my three kids were getting home, and I did not want, them navigating around each other. And so I said, let's do another day. And they're like, can you do Friday at 11? I'm like, yes, but they have to be gone by 1 because I'm recording a video chat. Now, were they gone by 1? Technically, no. And so my little dog is barking, and he can't go up onto a different floor because they're still there. And we move forward.
We move forward, and yes, we will get to Jimmy Kimmel. We will get to Roger Goodell. We will get to whether the athlete podcast boom has reached peak. But yes, this is a first world problem I can relate to. It's one you don't want to admit. I've had this happen as well. And it sounds bad because you want the cleaning to be done to the best of anybody's abilities. And then you start to sound like a real elitist. You start to sound like an ungrateful Richie, where you're going, when will the servant be done cleaning my slop? What is going on? Chop,
I,
chop.
to be clear, it's like a second order issue because if they weren't done, it would be fine. But for the little dog barking at them, and so I mean, whatever. It's again first world problem. We're lucky to have it.
Yes.
Lucky to be alive. So when you
Ah,
think about it,
well, that's what I tell my son. Existence itself is a gift. Stop complaining. And yet we will probably have our own complaints along the way as we talk about the media ecosystem. But let's start with breaking Jimmy Kimmel news. Kimmel, dominant figure in the news. Kimmel versus Trump. Sinclair, one of the major affiliate, what do we call them? Affiliate owners, station owners, something like
yeah,
that.
station.
Uh, they have announced that they're going to resume airing Jimmy Kimmel. They had stopped as part of their reaction to his comment about who killed Charlie Kirk. Now, Kimmel was briefly suspended by Disney. He was let back on the air after some backlash, mostly on the lefty side. And were you surprised, Ryan? Were you surprised by how many people watched Kimmel and how many people watched on YouTube? I haven't looked at it recently, but it got to 8 figures rather quickly.
No, when you texted me privately how many people are going to watch, and I said a lot on Tuesday, and then it's going to taper off. And I would say I don't know what the numbers were Wednesday yet. Thursday wouldn't be out for a couple hours, but given that we didn't hear about Wednesday numbers, I
Mm.
would surmise that they didn't shatter any meter. But no, I think look, there was a lot of intrigue about what he was going to say when he came back. Would he apologize? Would he be defiant? There was no apology, so uh I don't know.
Well, there's kind of an apology. I mean, there's dispute over whether it was an apology. I think on the right, they're saying it was one of these, I'm sorry if you were offended apologies. He did, get choked up and cry about the Charlie Kirk killing. That's something. Uh, Before we get into all that, can we pull up the clip of Kimmel conveying why so many people were suddenly watching? I found it to be very interesting and perhaps the most memorable part of his Tuesday monologue.
Ratings. Well, I do tonight.
Okay. Let's pull the clip. That's enough applause. That's enough applause. We get the idea. Pull the clip. I mean, I'm not mad at the clip. He harnessed that controversy expertly in that particular context, and he was more right than I even knew. I think getting over 6 million people watching, pretty astounding. I mean, that's like
It's about
that
4 times his average.
4 times his average. It's almost
Wow.
like a Western Conference Finals in the NBA if they're lucky at this point these days. The YouTube numbers rather explosive, and that's correct. Trump going against him fuels the ratings. It pumps it up. But now this gets to the business side, because I've talked some Kimmel. I've talked some Kimmel in the free speech context. We had Mike Pesca on last week when this story was initially breaking, and who's offended and all of that. But let's start looking at this from just a business perspective, because that's what I bring you on to do. What the hell do you do if you're Disney? Kimmel is continuing to pound Trump. That's part of the juice for him. He's not really relenting. Disney appears desperate not to be seen as a partisan company and to get out of the culture wars, and they've been thrust back into it. What the hell should they or will they do?
Well, I think that one of the reasons that he got brought back so fast is so, in 10 years ago they might have been much more impervious to political backlash on either side because their business was kind of baked in with the ESPN sub fees driving a lot. I mean, I don't know that there was any case of like, people wouldn't boycott their movies or boycott going to Disney World now, but now we live in a world, and it kind of started with, I think it probably started first with the NFL, actually, with the Kaepernick kneeling.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
there was conservative boycotts of that. Then there's been conservatives have really actively tuned out the NBA, and I don't care what they say, they have. And conservatives boycotted Bud Light. But then we've started to see some like liberal boycotts work. I think so conservatives boycotted Target over like a lot of like the pride and other kind of, for lack of a better word, woke stuff.
Mm.
And so then Target was like, okay, we're rolling back pride, we're rolling back DEI. And then the liberals started boycotting Target. And this is actually something that has happened in my household. My wife is black. She's shopped for all the kids' clothes at Target, probably spent, I don't know, close 10 grand a year at Target. Like it's a substantial lot of money. She went cold turkey and has not been back since they rolled back DEI. And so I don't know if I would have even like believed that the left boycott of Target was making any type of like dent in them until, literally it hit home. But I like those boycotts, like, they can cancel Disney Plus and Hulu and not do a $25,000 Disney World vacation. And there is like that it's like a real concern for Disney.
I mean, where are Americans spending their money at this point? If both sides are currently boycotting all of these major companies, where is the money going? I have to wonder. Now, I mean, I think that there's this resistance, pardon the pun, to acknowledging that these boycotts can do damage based on your political ideology. I remember when conservatives first started boycotting sports leagues, there was this pushback from Team Blue, the journalists saying this isn't taking an effect. They would never stop watching the NFL. Even as I was watching the viewership needle point downward, there's
It
this
went down like 20%.
it was pretty crazy. And there's this, I think, inclination to deny the power of your enemy in making these companies bend. Because if you acknowledge the power of the enemy in making the companies bend, then that's more fuel for the company to listen to people. I think it is a serious consideration on Disney's side to worry about people on the left when they bounced Kimmel. I do.
Absolutely.
I think they're
But
between a rock and a hard
like
place.
the what percentage of Disney Plus like direct to consumer subscribers are left leaning? It's got to be what, like 75%?
You think 75? I don't know. I'd probably go 60, but how the hell would we know? The point is
They
it's a lie.
know.
The point is
They
a
know.
they know. They know. And they put him back on for a reason. Now, to what you're saying, what I find interesting, I feel as though conservatives boycotted first because they needed to be heard. I think on the lefty side, in the social media era earlier, they didn't need to boycott because once something was an outrage, they had enough people who saw the world similarly in the room, in the C suite, making decisions at these companies that the decisions just got made. And if
Well,
there's
yeah,
now,
the steamrollers don't need to boycott ants.
yeah, well, there you go. And so now that the Target thing happened and the Bud Light thing happened, there's a recognition that this is just how you have to be heard. And it happens. I think Disney had to actually worry about it. But on the other side, as I've written on houseofstrauss.com, subscribe today, folks, there's a fake threat in lieu of a real threat that they have to worry about from the right, that Disney has to worry about. The fake threat is what Trump is blustering about. This idea that, oh, I'm going to pull your FCC license. I'm going to pull ABC's FCC license. That's really hard to do. You need to get it through the courts. I don't think that would be successful. But it's almost as though he's barking that fake threat to obscure the real threat that you're not supposed to say, the legitimate threat, which is mergers, how Team Trump is in charge of which media companies get to merge together and win this game for not just hearts and minds, but also eyeballs and attention. And so that's the real leverage currently that the Trump administration has. I don't say it like I'm supporting it or I'm even against it. I'm just saying it descriptively, that this is the
It's an
world we're now in.
empirical fact.
Yeah, this is the
Look, that he exacted a pound of flesh out of CBS and 60 Minutes in order to allow the Skydance acquisition of Paramount to go through. And by the way, the Skydance people are big supporters of his. And he was making them wait until he exacted the flesh from the people that they were swallowing up. And so, yeah, to your point, Disney has this acquisition that they want to do of NFL Network, and it also involves licensing of Red Zone brand and
I was
linear
going to ask you
distribution of
about
Red
that.
Zone and fantasy football assets, but mainly it is the purchase of NFL Network. And that it like we are at front office. Michael McCarthy, my colleague, did a story where Ari Fleischer, the ex press secretary for George W. Bush, so this is a guy who is in the Republican kind of circles for a long time. It's like, yeah, Trump is going to hold this up. It's quote political catnip. And so it's interesting that his threats were about things that really aren't under his control. And by the way, you wrote about this, but the FCC, Brendan Carr, whatever,
Yeah,
Carr,
Brendan.
going after ABC was the biggest unforced error in a long time,
Yeah.
because then it actually does bring into the question free speech. Like, Nexstar and Sinclair are their own businesses, and they can preempt Jimmy Kimmel, whatever, subject to their own contracts, and that doesn't have anything to do with government protected free speech. But once the FCC gets involved, then all of a sudden you turn him into like an actual legitimate martyr. And so it was like just a really stupid thing for them to do at that moment of time when the tide was already really like gonna swallow him.
That's completely true. And I think part of it is when people in Trump's coalition try to act like Trump, it doesn't work. Trump is sui generis. He can say wild things, and there will be people who react to it with this literalness, but a lot of us won't. But when a government official goes on a podcast, and I believe he was revved up because he was on a partisan podcast, and he says that ABC can do this the easy way or the hard way, that's just not something that should be said. And there's this reality behind the scenes, but just you're giving it this ugly shape that people can then marshal around, and it
It's like the
becomes this fuel
Live
for Kimmel.
Nation CEO being like, "Yeah, concert tickets should be $70,000." What are you
Yeah,
doing? Like, why are
no,
you saying
it
that out loud?
doesn't. It's a bad, yeah, it was definitely a bad move. It was definitely an own goal. And I think that Kimmel has harnessed that. It was a gift to him while he was
Yeah,
at
and
his
it's
lowest
like,
point.
the most aggravating thing over the last week and a half, I think probably for both of us, although I don't necessarily want to speak for you, was like all of these new free speech advocates coming out of the woodwork. I'm like, I did not hear from you when AOC was saying deplatforming works, or Roseanne was getting fired from ABC. Gina Carano was getting fired from Disney. People were getting deplatformed from YouTube right and left. The sitting president of the United States got banned from Twitter.
Which
Uh,
Kimmel celebrated, to be sure.
and
And
he celebrated Roseanne getting fired. And so, like, this is not some type of like person who should have been made into a free speech martyr. It's just like I don't know, it's stupid.
well, maybe I'm just more numb to hypocrisy than you are. I just zoomed past that in my own mind. I just figured that a lot of the people who were celebrating free speech now were totally anti-free speech a moment ago, and I kind of just charged it to the game. But there's a lot going on here. The weirdest part to me is this: is that in a way, I feel like a lot of Team Blue is almost underrating the threat. And that's what I'm trying to wrap my mind around, is that they're underrating the threat. For whatever reason, I feel like I see the threat more than some people who should be more charged up about it. Like they're so focused on this idea that Donald Trump is trying to pull the FCC license, which is fake, that they can't see how the conservative coalition might actually be able to reshape the entire structure of mainstream media. That I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying it's within their midst. You can use leverage power to get different people hired running these companies to change the content of what the companies produce. And if I'm making the steelman case for why Team Trump is doing this, or they say that we're not in violation or we're not being authoritarian, here's what they would say. They would say, look, the FCC is here to prevent monopolies, to prevent monopolistic control and communications. The networks are what? Are they not an ideological monopoly? When you go on NBC, when you go on CBS, when you go on ABC, I know people might say Fox. I don't really know what the network of Fox does typically other than football games, but let's just set that aside. But if you go on the networks, which do use public airwaves, it's just a monoculture. It's propaganda. And it's weird because they weren't like this when the Democrats were more popular. Now the Democrats are maybe at their least popular point since I've been sentient. And people on these channels are more overtly propagandistic for one political party. We in the administration are here to break up the ideological monopoly, and we're going to use our leverage over these mergers to do it. And we're going to say, if you're going to merge with this or that company, whether you're Paramount, CBS, or your ABC Disney, we'll say, okay, we'll let you do it, but you need to restore some balance. Is there a counter argument to that that would frame that argument as unreasonable?
No, but I also think it's like a lot more difficult to accomplish for anyone leading these companies because it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole. Like we saw John Malone, it was like 5 years ago where Discovery was acquired, like in WB Warner Brothers and Discovery were merging. John Malone was going to be in control of them when it closed. And he's like, we're going to turn CNN into like an unbiased news organization. And he went about trying to do it. And it's like, how has that worked out? You watch it, and like the end result of like 5 years of charging is that they have like
Scott Jennings.
Scott Jennings arguing like 1-on-7. And so it's like, yeah, he at least he's like there, but he's just like getting like mauled by like a pack of cats or whatever.
He seems to like it.
I know, but like it's not the fact that they have like one guy who's getting like ganged up on is like the best compromise CNN could muster over like 5 years of this guy like really trying to will it, because these organizations just have like so many different people and they're willing to like almost martyr themselves out of jobs because they know somebody in their tribe is just going to hire them somewhere else. And so, you look at CNN, MSNBC, NBC News, CBS News, ABC News, and then you've got like the New Yorker and New York Magazine and Vox and The Atlantic. And there's just like so many of these places that there's really like nobody really fears for their job at any one of them because they can just get a job somewhere else.
Maybe we should give them more credit, though. What if they're just willing to lose their job over this? What if the ideology is so important that they're willing to risk it? And it's not a cynical play of, oh, I can get hired somewhere else. I think we're at a point now where it's almost like religion. and there is a degree of self-sacrifice, and I would give them that credit at least. Now, I'm just trying to describe the world as it is. I find this to be a very difficult topic to engage because when you start explaining it, it sounds like a justification.
Right.
And eh, I don't even know how to talk about our situation to give people broad strokes, this bigger picture. For so long, when we were kids, the media was this fourth estate. And you could argue it wasn't independent, or you could argue the government had influence over it, but it was profitable and it could stand alone. And if, I don't know, the George Bush senior administration was saying to ABC Disney, well, it wasn't merged back then. Whatever. Maybe it was. I can't remember the
It
timing on that.
was. It
It
was
was. Yeah, yeah,
around
yeah.
then.
But they were saying to ABC, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It just, they just laugh. Like, you're not going to tell us what to do as the federal government. We're this big profitable company. We don't care. But what happened is the media fell apart. It collapsed. It got not popular anymore. It got not profitable anymore. The newspapers were completely destroyed by the internet. Fewer and fewer people subscribe to these TV services. They
Google and
can't stand alone.
Facebook sell all the ads.
Yeah. They can't stand alone. And then everybody else who actually destroyed them also need government approval because everybody's trying to be the last man standing and have the biggest business and merge. So now we're in a new era where the government has say so over who the winner or the loser is in the media war. I have no illusions. Whoever's in charge is going to use that power. They can use it egregiously. They can use it to the extent where we say, hey, this is censorship. It's going to get used. And I feel like it's hard for me to have a conversation with somebody who's not in denial of that reality. I don't think it's cynical. I just follow the incentives. The Charlie Munger, show me the incentive, I'll show you the result. These are the incentives. If you're in charge, you get to pick who's going to win the media wars between these companies.
It's kind of interesting how we got this whole left-hand turn, but
Sure.
it's interesting how we got to this point where these late night shows like Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Meyers, they're not like they're if to the extent they have jokes, the jokes aren't funny, and it really is just like kind of like an ideological pulpit in many cases. Like
Weird.
it like I don't know. It's weird because when we were growing up, I don't think Jay Leno was that funny, but he wasn't like this. I don't know. When Bill Simmons and Cousin Sal and stuff talk about like Letterman in the 80s, they have this reverential tone. I don't remember him as being like extraordinarily funny or having like a creative show that was must see. But again, he was not like banging a hammer on the table in favor of one political party.
Yeah.
And now we've reached at a point where like these late night shows are not trying to appeal to everyone. They're trying to appeal to one specific tribe and also aren't that funny. And so I don't know if we ever like get back to a time where like comedy is supposed to be for everyone.
I don't know. I think that there is uneconomic justification. You could justify it by saying there is a large population of, we'll call them blue boomers, who do watch these channels, and if you appeal to them, it gives you a higher floor, right? Your ceiling is cut off, but it gives you a higher floor. Now, I'm skeptical of that argument. I look at the ratings that Greg Gutfeld gets on Fox News and how they're bigger than these shows on network TV, and I think that, hey, could you guys try a little balance? Just like a little bit and see how it works? I mean, you might be
That just
right.
means well, here's the thing. He's one person competing for the red boomers, and they are three networks competing for the blue boomers.
Yes.
So, yeah, he beats them, but it's because he
Well,
doesn't have
and
like,
MSNBC and to a degree CNN. I mean, there might be five competing.
yeah,
Your point's well
right,
taken. I'm sorry for interjecting, but continue, sir.
right. So I don't think he's funny either. He gets like hung up as like, oh, look what happens when you try to be funny. I don't know. When I watch his monologues, I'm like, it's not tickling my funny bone. But
Is
um,
anybody funny on mainstream media to Ryan Glass-Steagall? I mean, I agree, but I can't come up with anybody.
Conan O'Brien's show was the last type of show of any of these types of things that I thought was funny, and it wasn't like you know that's the thing. Like Letterman would at least have funny guests on. He would have Norm Macdonald on to come do a bit. But like, yeah, Conan was the last gasp of this. And by the way, Conan is left, but Conan's show was funny. And I think he could be a big secret winner in all of this dust up because I think whichever network of CBS, NBC, or ABC gives him a show is going to like find an audience breathing a sigh of relief that like someone is trying to make jokes the main point of the show.
I didn't even think about Conan as the winner of this. I agree with you that he is hysterical and he's the guy when I was a kid who made me laugh. I don't know if Kimmel is funny. He is charismatic. He's comfortable. He's he's got a certain ease with him in that particular role, but nobody doing that job to me is truly hysterical. I think it's just an art form that's dying out. The late night talk show is dying out, and this is maybe a death rattle of it. Suddenly it matters. Suddenly
If
it's a
Shane
focus.
Gillis had one of these shows, it would be good.
Yeah, but I don't think he would do one of these shows. I don't think the
He doesn't
format
have to. That's the thing.
he doesn't have to. I don't think the format would hold him. I don't think I don't know. It's just but I think it's okay. I think what's happening I think what the point I'm making is this is that there is an economic justification, but people make such justifications to themselves when it's what they want. I don't think that the people involved in making these decisions want to reach across the aisle. I think they're spiritually against it. And so they might make the economic argument for their selections, but really it's a culture thing. The culture, a culture with which we are familiar because we live in deep blue areas, is that you don't do that, is that there's no such thing as balance, is that that's both sidesism. You can't have both sidesism. I think that's what's going on. And that's what the FCC in the Trump regime is attempting to break up from the outside. That's the battle we're seeing. It's becoming about something else, but that's the broader battle.
It's kind of amazing that he is like that obsessed with what the media says, given that he defeated the whole Borg twice, and if you listen to him tell it 3 times.
I don't think Trump's that obsessed. This is a point. Let me interject. I think there's something we're getting stuck on something because Trump is just the ultimate magnet. I think the focus on Trump distracts from a broader ideological project, a project 2025, if you will, as I sort of say tongue in cheek. I think we're looking at it through the prism of Trump's sensibilities are offended. Trump wants to throw Jimmy Kimmel in prison because he feels insulted by Jimmy Kimmel. What's happening is that the people around Trump are trying to change the media because they are conservatives and they care about their own ideology. And the focus of Trump, the focus on Trump, Trump eventually isn't going to be here. I think what
I disagree. I think I don't disagree that he's not always going to be here, but
Trump will live forever, says Ryan.
These oligarchs are going to start living to like.
Oh, I forgot you have that take too.
But,
the organ replacement.
Yeah, we talked about that before. We don't have to get back into that. Yeah. But no, Trump is obsessed with it. Do you ever go on Truth Social and look at his feed? Because that's like actually how you figure out what he's obsessed with.
No.
I do that. I started doing that because I was in a group thread that if I sent a fake one that got screen grabbed onto Twitter, I'd get like a Venmo fine. So I'm like, fine, I'm gonna download.
You gotta vet it.
Okay,
Ryan. You can admit you're on Truth Social.
The reason the reason I finally buckled was that he congratulated Clay Travis on his upcoming book, and I sent that screenshot of Clay reacting to it, and they're like, "This is fake." I'm like, "No, it's not." Clay would not send a fake screenshot of Trump congratulating his book. There's no chance. I know Clay Travis; he wouldn't do that. I downloaded Truth Social. I was like, no, see, it's right here. I do not have to pay your Venmo fine.
Oh my God.
But he is obsessed with the media.
No. I'm not disagreeing with that. He obviously is. He likes to fight. He likes to respond to personal slights. What I'm saying, when Brendan Carr is being bombastic on Trump's behalf, it looks like he's sucking up to Trump to suck up to Trump. But there's a distinction. There are people in Trump's orbit who suck up to Trump to suck up to Trump. And there are people in Trump's orbit who suck up to Trump to accomplish their vision. That's the distinction I'm making. Stephen Miller is quite obsequious to Donald Trump. He's always sucking up to Trump. But everybody knows that Stephen Miller has an agenda. He has an ideological vision. And by sucking up to Trump, it makes it easier for him to accomplish that. Carr is similar. This whole idea of breaking up the media in this manner, that's Carr's vision. And he's sucking up to Trump to accomplish that vision. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, those are all fair points. It also just feels like a waste of time because, as we discussed before, the quote mainstream media has never been less profitable. Now, look, you could go and talk about their earnings, but then if we adjust for inflation, they're clearly less profitable than they used to be if you're looking at it on any type of comparable scale. They've never been less popular. They've never had more competition from all of these quote unquote fringe sources. You look at CBS buying up the Free Press from Bari Weiss for $150 million. You look at all of these upstart Substacks and conservative news outlets and everything on and on and on down the line. You look at Tucker Carlson having as much distribution as he does.
So this is an interesting argument. So you're saying that this might be a stupid battle to wage because this is a battle for the past, and why even care about it?
The two of the three last elections, at the very least, the public has overwhelmingly ignored the clear preference of the media, entertainment, corporate America, vertically integrated messaging apparatus, as Wes Yang calls them.
Okay, well then maybe, and I haven't seen anybody else advance this argument, but this has been a thought in my head. Is this a battle for boomer hearts and minds? Is this a recognition, perhaps, not about the future, but about the idea that boomers, while they might be older and sadly dying in increasing numbers, they do vote. They're high propensity voters. They're the people who watch these networks. And maybe to change grandma's mind, you need to get Jimmy Kimmel out of there and get Greg Gutfeld or whoever in there. And that's going to help you electorally. Is that potentially...
I don't know. You think Stephen A. in for Jimmy Kimmel is going to make some big difference in elections? I don't I don't know. No. And
Probably. Yeah, I mean, I actually think that would be a little bit justifiable electorally as an agenda. This idea that this needs to be disrupted. It needs to be less of a monoculture from the Republican side.
And Trump won 2 of the 3 last elections. He won this one pretty convincingly. What Obama probably won about as convincingly as Trump won this one, but in a country where 45% of the people on each side are just going to vote that side no matter.
Ryan, for Trump to win in 2028, he needs all those networks. the standard fare will not do. He will need it all. No, I think
that's if there is an election.
Yeah. Well, then you need even more networks at that point, I think, to accomplish that sort of vision. I could talk about this all day. We might even return to it, but we're over 30 minutes into this here show and should maybe shift to how all TV ratings are fake. Is that what we should shift to? Is that what we should talk about? Can we throw that up? Can we throw up the NFL ratings? This is something that maybe we can clip this on YouTube because I feel as though nobody's saying this. Okay, so we see the NFL ratings for this regular season, some eye-popping figures for, oh my God, so many people watching football. Football watching up 21%, Ryan, over 2023. That's just not true.
What they're saying, but
what is that?
There's 10% is their main thing, right? 21% is a smaller sample, and 10% is the total.
Well, I think it was. Let me look at this. Up 10% over 2024, up 21% over 2023.
Okay, yes.
And this is a drum we continue to bang, which is that Nielsen was bullied into changing its formula. And there were arguments for why it needed to, because we have changed from everybody having a TV in their house to people watching on their phone. So the formula needed to change. But it's resulted in this measurement that we can't trust. We trust that a lot of people watch football. There's no way over 21% more people are watching football now than 2023. Nothing in football happened to make it that much more interesting. There's not that much more football fervor out in the streets. There's just no way. And yet everybody in the industry is going to continue to quote these numbers compared against the past as though this explosive growth is happening, not just in football, but in everything.
Well, not the NBA.
Well, that's just kind of a bad sign, but they signed their deal. Congrats to them. And it's just, there's no way this stuff is true. It can't be true. We have YouTube now. People are playing all these video games. There's no way, in my opinion, that the popularity of these TV concerns are going up right now. But if all the numbers, the only numbers we have are telling us that, I guess that's just the lie we're going to roll with, huh?
Yeah. And okay, so to recap on what you said, in 2020 they changed the ratings so that it started counting out of home viewers in the initial like next day ratings that they announce. And so that's if you're watching on your phone somewhere else, if you're watching at a gym or a hotel or a bar or, anywhere,
Yeah.
like grandma's house. Now that counts. And so to your point, yeah, viewership habits have changed, and maybe sports probably should have been getting credit for all of these viewers that gather in groups outside of their homes to watch these events, particularly football, forever. And that is an argument that, Fox, ESPN, NBC, CBS have been making forever. And I understand counting that. But where this starts to get intellectually dishonest is when you pump it and say, well, this many more people are watching than last year. And so, yeah,
Yes.
you heard me say that in 2020 they made this change. So what's the big deal? It was like that in 2023 and 2024. Well, not so fast because every year Nielsen has been adding more and more of an emphasis in this out of home sample. So even though they made this change 5 years ago now, they're still juicing it up year by year by year so that these numbers are getting bigger. And it doesn't make any sense because look, the cable and satellite bundle 10 years ago was in 100 million homes. Now ESPN is in like 70 million homes. The broadcast networks might be in the low to mid 80s. They were in 110 million homes before. So it just doesn't make any sense that there would be record viewership for football right now, which is what every press release every week is saying is the case, when these games are in 20 to 30% fewer homes than they were. And so, like, even with all of the other options, Netflix and YouTube and video games, like, just the fact that like a lot of households don't have these networks anymore in them to watch it at all should inform you that they're not getting viewership records. But I mean, I fight about this all the time, and I feel like you and I are like the only two people in
It's
America
weird.
who care because, like, they said it's a record in the press release, so we're gonna say it's a record, and everybody's guilty of it. Like, just I think, and everybody knows too. Like, this isn't new, and we've been talking about this enough, and we talk to people who also know this stuff, but it's just like I don't know, everybody's a little bit on the same team. And we want the sports we cover to be popular. Like the more people who watch these events, the more like, people we're gonna catch in this little fish net to care about like where we are three derivatives later. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, all of us want to think that what we're talking about is culturally relevant and maybe even more so than ever. But I don't know. It feels really icky the way that we all just kind of ignore that they're changing the formula.
Well, if we don't really have anything else to go on, I quoted the Kimmel getting over 6 million people because that's what Nielsen says. I don't have any other number. I have to just go with the number. To me, that was impressive because we've got a grounding of expectation and what's being currently reported about TV figures. But we're going to cling to a number if we've got nothing else. And I think you're right. Everybody's on team hype. Nobody wants to be the nerd questioning these things. And it's a bigger story if this is building, but there's no skepticism. There's no really the last Super Bowl was the most popular Super Bowl. That Super Bowl, like with that snooze fest. And it's not just Nielsen. There's a credulity to the trades publications when these networks will just self-report their own numbers or say, actually, way more people were watching digitally, and they'll change their own formulas. I always turn back to how HBO's Euphoria, which I always say wrong, and Anthony Mays gives me a lot of guff about it. He says I say it Euphoria, like I'm Hubie Brown. But they said they had something like 14 million viewers for one of their shows, and it's just transparently fake. But not many people are nerds like we are, Ryan. So they just run with it. And we're in this wild west. And I know people might be questioning, they might be going, okay, why are you guys even talking about this? They probably think that a lot. But in this one, here's what I'm saying. Here's why I think it's important. I think it's weird that when Ryan and I were kids, we knew how popular everything on TV was. We knew we could trust the Nielsen box and we could trust the number. There is a bizarre irony to how now we have better technology, better information in theory, and we totally don't know how popular anything is.
Well, we know how popular stuff is relative to each other right now. What I take issue with is any type of apples to apples comparison with the past.
Well, I would disagree with you on that. I think that we kind of know, but we don't completely know because there are these different ways things are popular. There's and we can broaden this out from TV to podcasts and how popular are you on YouTube versus your downloads. And we'll get into your thing on the Athlete podcast, which was a great article by you, Ryan. Ooh. But I think that it's not just about a relative to the past. I think that we're just in this wild west, these vagaries of how popular anything is. And we might have a sense that when something's big, like a K-pop Demon Hunters, but for the most part, we just don't know. And we used to know. And to me, that's crazy. It's crazy that we used to know, but now with better technology, we know less. I find that to be ironic and weird.
Well, yeah, what I don't understand is like the legacy network should just be paying Nielsen, hey, why don't you grade Netflix exactly the way we get graded so we actually know how many people are watching K-pop Demon Hunters. Like, I don't know what's stopping them from doing that, but like they might not want to know exactly how popular it is. Like they might just like want to like kind of bury their heads in the sand about it.
But like people telling us, why don't you guys read the comments of anything you do and figure out what the feedback is? Like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't want to know all that.
The bridge far.
Yeah. Anthony Mays says you need a new ratings punching bag. Euphoria hasn't been on since 2022. I'm sure there's a new pretentious show. Not that I'm calling Euphoria pretentious, though I am kind of. That could replace them. That they've reported it has 11 billion viewers and
probably whatever. Go find the K-pop Demon Hunter stats.
That one's real. Every kid in America knows about K-pop Demon Hunters. That soundtrack is everywhere. I know that's popular. Dealer's choice. Do you want to discuss the Caitlin Clark Nike rollout and the curious choice of models, or your fantastic article on whether we have reached peak athlete podcast?
Let's talk about my fantastic article.
Your glorious article, your stupendous article. I don't know if I fed it to our production team to throw it up there for the visual. I suppose we could talk about it even if it's not up there. It is.
Got it quickly.
There it is. Have we reached peak athlete podcast? I feel like I live in a glass house, pardon the pun, Ryan. I mean, who am I? Who am I without millions of views on YouTube to tell these athletes that they should pack up the microphone? But are you floating the idea that we have too many of these guys, too many of these jock podcast shows? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think it goes back to this idea that with these digital programming, there's no look, we can have all of our complaints that we just said about Nielsen, but at least they're a third party arbiter and they're grading everybody on the same scale. Although the networks complained that like they were not grading the YouTube NFL game on the right scale. So, but we don't need to go back to that.
Yeah.
So the there's no real charts with that you can combine to figure out how popular a podcast is. We see YouTube numbers, but Bill Simmons says these can be juked. And I think we all kind of, anyone who is internet native at this point knows that social media viewership and YouTube viewership, there are like ways that you can juke these metrics. Like, I don't know, you pay some shadowy firm and they get a bot farm in Argentina to just click and click and click, and it looks like your content is
I
popular.
haven't been doing this, but anyway, continue.
The and Simmons is like, yeah, there's people who cheat on this for sure. And he didn't name any names. I assume that he means some of these athlete podcasts. And in a different story with Hollywood Reporter, he said that the quote unquote athlete podcast boom was the most overrated story in media. You look at Apple and you look at the sports podcast rankings. New Heights was on there on Monday when I looked. The rest of the top 10 was all like professional media guys. It was like Simmons, Pardon My Take, Rosillo, Colin Cowherd, Dan Lebitard, Pablo Torre, and fantasy football content. You look at the Spotify top 10, it was most of those same people. At the end of the top 10, Joel Klatt and Pat McAfee were in there. So maybe a couple of those guys that I named were out. But it's mostly like, and by the way, like I don't think you think of like Klatt and McAfee as like the normal athlete pods either.
Yeah.
Like McAfee, yes, he was an all-pro punter. Klatt played quarterback at Colorado, but they are really media first as opposed to kind of the athlete media podcasts that I'm talking about. And so you look at those and you're like, well, if the normal like, sports media, radio, podcast guys are actually the top 10, why can't I go 20 minutes without seeing a new press release about an athlete podcast? And it's they do get big YouTube numbers, and I don't know how much of it's real and how much of it's not, and I don't know why they seem to have an advantage on YouTube over media members, but they seem to.
Visual athletes are better looking. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just presentability, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
Or, if I go onto YouTube, sometimes I want to see highlights of an athlete. Let's say I put in YouTube Travis Kelce highlights, or I'm curious if he's declining. And I want to know about that because I'm placing bets. I don't know. And then New Heights is going to pop up because I've searched for him for this other reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's part of that. And but it might be also that a lot of them are like partnered with firms that are helping their numbers go up. And so the in any event, it's just like it seems like there's hundreds of them now, and you wonder like, is anyone listening to these whole shows, or are these kind of created as businesses to get people to watch the highlights? And how many like millions of highlight impressions or whatever adds up to just superseding people listening to a whole show? And I don't really know the answer to this stuff, but
I'm testing the theory I'm testing my looks theory by looking up one particular athlete podcast. It's a podcast you mentioned in your article. I'm testing
okay.
this is my theory right here.
Or is this Sophie Cunningham?
Yeah, you figured it out. You got it. What's that one called, by the way? For some reason, an actual highlights just popped up. I mean, I'm just bad at this. I'm choking. I can't figure out how to find her podcast on YouTube. Apologies to Sophie Cunningham as she recovers from her injury this season. Literally highlights. Full game Indiana Fever versus Connecticut Sun highlights from a month ago popped up. Oh, show me something. Sophie Cunningham. Yeah, not too impressive. I mean, I would be happy with some of this viewership, but it's new. I would be happy.
No, you look at her. You look at on Twitter though. Look at her Twitter, and the highlights of her podcast have like enormous engagement.
Yeah. Well, the athlete podcast has lent itself to the highlight more so than other podcasts. I rarely see people share a clip. It does happen, but I rarely see people share a clip of Bill Simmons and Cousin Sal talking about Guess the Lines, but people listen to that, including myself, religiously. Whereas I think the clip sharing to listening to a full podcast of Jeff Teague's podcast has to be 1 to what? right? Or what to one? Are we talking about 1,000 to 1? I just, for whatever reason, the athlete podcasts are almost this just feeder system to the real product, which is the clip.
Do you want to read what Mays said, or do you want me to read it?
Let's have you read it.
Mays says monetization probably goes Patreon to Substack subscribers greater than live reads, greater than audio ads, greater than YouTube ads, greater than to social media monetization. Well, the last two are where the athlete money is coming from, because we talked about, like, the first of all, nobody's paying to subscribe to them. Second of all, people are listening to the legacy media guys and barstool stuff much more than listening to the athlete pods, besides New Heights, which is in a class into of itself. So all this whole ecosystem is built on YouTube and social media, because I mean, granted, that is what people see. People see YouTube viewership numbers, people see social impressions. TikTok, which I'm totally don't understand at all. That's they're getting a lot there too. So I think it's like an Instagram, and you add up all the social platforms, and you find a pretty big aggregated audience. But as I said, all of these things can be juked. And so I'm not accusing any single person or entity of doing this, but I think that we all, if you've been on the internet long enough, you know that this stuff happens. And so I don't know. I don't know how the bubble bursts.
Mm.
Because there's been so much gambling money that has come into this, and yeah, it's a little bit lower than it was before
Well,
because there's less new states.
some of these
But that has
athlete,
underwritten a lot of it.
yeah, some of these athlete podcasts are popular. I think The Heights is popular, even if it's more of a clip show. They've got Leonardo DiCaprio on most recently. They had Taylor Swift on. Obviously, that drove some engagement. They've got this kind of celebrity fuel. I think Julian Edelman's podcast seems popular. And then there's Bussin' with the Boys with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. That one seems fairly popular. Some of these
Popular,
are.
but they're getting paid like $10 million a year. So it's like, are they that popular?
I mean, I don't know where the money's coming from. I saw
Well,
Bud
it
Light
comes from
slap.
FanDuel.
Yeah, I think there was some desperation from Bud Light as well to change their branding. And so they were all over the Bussin' with the Boys set with the logos. Some of these are organically popular, but a lot of them just are not. And a lot of that's just because Bill Simmons is going to dump on a player he doesn't like. And most of these guys are not going to do that. And when I listen to sports content, the praise has to be earned, right? It can't just be praise. It doesn't, if you like everybody, you like nobody. That sort of dynamic. And that's the problem. I think that's the main problem the athlete podcasts have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, you want to switch to the Caitlin Clark stuff? You have to do the expository.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Extemporaneous racial expository over here. Let's do it. Put up the Caitlin Clark. The Caitlin
That was
Clark.
me punting like Pat McAfee.
Yeah, yeah. It's a McAfee style punt. They have leaked, Nike has, Caitlin Clark merchandise. I had forgotten about Caitlin Clark to a degree with her being injured, having a bad season. And I figured Nike had as well because they had never quite remembered her in the first place. But now they're pushing her product, and it's with models who, let's just say, don't look like, I don't know, the archetypal idea of the Caitlin Clark fans who were destroying the country from the perspective of many in the WNBA. They are
What do you mean by
people,
that archetype?
white bread Midwestern people. That's what I mean. Nothing wrong with any of these people, although a few of them look rather dour in the merch, like they had to really be convinced to wear the Caitlin Clark. I will say that if you zoom in. But man, it just appears that Nike is so afraid of the demo. They don't like the demo. And maybe that's one of the themes of our show, Ryan, which is that it's not just about money with how these companies make decisions. There are other considerations. There are who is favored, ideological, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And there's just seems to be this revulsion within Nike when it comes to Caitlin Clark, or there has been, of we don't want her fan base. We don't like those fans, whatever we think of them. We need to signal that this is about something else. And this appeared to be almost a comical expression of that, or am I reading too much into it?
Um, if this happened in a vacuum, I don't think that you'd be reading too much into it, but
Yeah.
it's happened in this multi-year process of where they've refused to release her signature shoe. They're finally like releasing anything with her logo, but they could have been doing this while she was at Iowa now.
Kind of
This
missed
isn't
the boat. They
the
kind of missed the boat, I would say.
it didn't miss the boat if she comes back and is like electric and the fever win, but they missed a lot of this initial explosion several years dating back. Like this isn't the when we were kids and you couldn't sponsor college athletes. They could sponsor college athletes. They could have been making money on her last 2 years at Iowa. Like this was not something she didn't come and explode out of nowhere. She's like the leading scorer in the country as a sophomore. Like I've gone back and watched some of her old games from that point. But and so and she was like highly recruited, and it was like it's kind of a big deal that she didn't go to UConn because they had Paige Beckers there, so she went to Iowa. Like she look, she might have like really exploded on the scene in like the general public consciousness, but the basketball knowers and Nike have known about her since she was in high school, and
Mm.
really known about her since she was a sophomore in college. So that is now 4 years ago. And now we're just getting the first leaks of any type of apparel about her. And so they took forever, basically. And we've discussed this before, but they took forever because she just they didn't she doesn't fit the mold of what they wanted of the person who was going to like bring huge mainstream popularity to women's sports. And so it's a it's just it's very odd that like because Nike has it goes back to the same type of like CNN whack-a-mole stuff that I was doing. Like, yeah, the leader, they switched leaders at Nike and they're supposed to be trying to um not rebrand, but they're trying to like come back as a dominant business. They've had 5+ years of stagnancy, and they can't be bothered to really maximize what they are trying to do with marketing Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, they want a different reality. They it's the is versus ought. Asia Wilson, MVP again. She ought to be what moves units. She ought to be the person who can sell Nike merchandise. This is what ought to be true. We're going to invest in this because it ought to be true. And I'm sorry to say, sorry if it offends WNBA fans, just nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Caitlin Clark, it's a thing. Caitlin Clark got hurt. WNBA instantly became less relevant this season. I know you follow it. I know our mutual friend Spike Eskin worries about you and how much you tweet about the WNBA, but that's a different topic. But yeah, most people dropped out, and that's just how it is. And they just don't like how it is. Companies get like this. They've got their idea of who their customer should be, and that confounds their pursuit of dollars and just getting the customer where the customer is at. I've often said this about the sports leagues where they want their customer to be a highly educated Zoomer multi-ethnic woman, and instead it's like that Jersey Jerry guy from Barstool. And they don't want that guy. That's not their conception of what they do. They want a different demo that they can be proud of at a dinner party. And that's a lot of what happens with these marketing ploys.
Yeah, I don't know. This one like surprised me. Like it surprised me that and by the way, this was sent to us by someone who is very plugged in to the apparel industry. Like it's not like we noticed it on our own. Somebody else brought it to our attention.
Well,
And so
maybe you didn't notice, but I am racially interrogating literally every apparel model that there is, and that's how it crossed my view, Ryan. I don't know. No, yes, this was fed to us as something that was particularly surprising from somebody in the know.
yes. And so like yeah, it got sent to us in a group chat by someone who understands the sports apparel industry and how to market in it. And this person was just like baffled that these were the models that Nike was using to sell Caitlin Clark gear. And so I don't know. It's a very difficult topic to discuss because for obvious reasons. Like I don't want to get canceled. I have mouths to feed. But
I think it's fine. I think I don't think we've said anything outside the boundaries. I think everybody gets it. Should we do one quick hit before wrapping up on how Roger Goodell is, I don't know, hear no evil, see no evil on Tom Brady having a conflict of interest? Is
sure.
that okay? So Goodell, I guess, has fought back against allegations that Tom Brady has a conflict of interest as part owner of the Raiders getting this intel while announcing the games on the lead announcing crew. My quick take is, Ryan, I don't care about his conflict of interest. I don't care about how he might use intel. I care about the product of his announcing, and it's not very good. And I think it's undermined by these other considerations. Just improve the announcing. I don't care about anything else. Easy for me to say. That's my take.
Well, I wonder, like, does the conflict of interest prevent him from being like critical in a way that
Yes,
Troy Aikman is critical?
definitely.
Because I don't know whether that would be his natural inclination or not. We can't run a double blind experiment because last year when he started doing this, he was, gunning to get this ownership stake in the Raiders. So we don't know how critical he would be of coaches or quarterback and their decision making in the event where he wasn't seeking to be an NFL owner. I have not heard him go after people in a way that I suspect he would in private. And like, that's kind of like the question of like Michael Jordan and how he's going to be on NBC and Stephen A. Smith is going to be like, I know what Michael Jordan is, cigar chomping Michael Jordan is going to go after players. He knows what good and bad basketball is like and he is chomping at the bit to reveal it. And so like that Brady someone who performed up to his standard sees like some of these, Caleb Williams, he played well in the game that Brady had, but I don't think that Brady would go after him in a way that
Oh,
Aikman did in week 1.
hell
And
no.
so that's kind of what you want out of him because like as you said earlier, if you love everyone, you love no one. We would like to see Brady kind of be that like, Aikman level arbiter of good and bad.
The reason you say you suspect he's hiding it is because it comes out in interviews. You see it. You don't know who he's talking about, but he lashes out at people. He talks about how it's not enough to have 40 touchdowns and say great season. You need to be doing everything else. Well, I don't know if he's pointing that at Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow or who, but it's at someone when he's saying it. I think that's clearly the reason. I think you get far more honesty. He can't do it because he's trying to be all things to all people, and it's going to be seen a certain way if he's with the Raiders and crapping on
Well, I don't
something.
know if he would do that even if he wasn't with the Raiders, though. We don't know because he might not want like the blowback that comes with that. So,
It should be his defense. Look, folks, I'm just a bad announcer. It has nothing to do with the conflict of interest. I'm just bad at this, and I'm collecting over $20 million a year to just give the most insipid commentary over these games and make Greg Olson look better. I thought this was a good rundown. I think it was good. It was good, Ryan.
Mace says wait till he launches his
Oh
podcast.
my God. Tuesdays with Tom,
No,
whatever it's going to be.
he's that's a callback to our athlete pod discussion.
No, I know. I understand humor, Ryan. You don't have to tell me.
Okay, so this is what he meant, but no.
You're doing a great job. Let's promote your work, front office sports. You got anything that we should be on the lookout coming up?
I had an interview with Pedro Martinez that'll be out next week, and it was fun.
Has he got a new podcast you want to promote?
I can't
out?
give away the news in it, but
Okay.
good job by you.
That's a good job by you. And Pedro is a fantastic performer on MLB Network. I would listen to his athlete
TBS,
podcast.
TBS.
Oh, I forgot the whole. Anyway, this is why we have you. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. Good
All
job
right.
by you. Thanks,
Good job by
everybody.
you.